For a while now, I've been really interested in video game challenge runs. It doesn't really matter what game or what challenge, just seeing people try to play games in ways that they very clearly weren't designed to accommodate is such a fascinating thing to me. I've seen challenge runs on the internet that range from cool ideas for how to play a game you're already familiar with to borderline masochistic forms of self-torture for the sake of other people's enjoyment.
It's been like 45 minutes. Oh, that is illegal.
Thank you, Parkser.
And I love all of them. I've been wanting to do my own challenge run for a while now. Not even for a video, just in general. I have done some very basic challenge runs in the past, usually ones built into the game, like time trials or no-hit challenges. The main reason I haven't really done any bigger or crazier challenge runs is because they're either way too hard to the point that they don't seem fun at all, or they take way too long to the point that I'd get sick of it halfway through. But then I found out about Pokémon Nuzlocks, and these things caught my attention in a way that no other challenge run has. If you clicked on this video, I'm pretty sure you know what a Nuzlocke is, so I'm not going to waste time explaining that. All you need to know is that Nuzlocke stood out to me personally because of the way they get the player invested in the challenge by making them form connections with the team that they build themselves. This concept is fucking awesome to me, and ever since I found out about them, I've wanted to try one out for myself. However, I have never played Pokemon before, and given how the newer games look, I don't really think I want to. Obviously, there are other creature collectors out there. I've even played some of them, like Yokai Watch, or more recently, Pal World, and I adore both of these games and have played them both for hundreds of hours. People have even made Nuzlocke rules for both of these games, so I absolutely could have done my first Nuzlocke in one of them. But both games come with a catch. Palworld specifically is still pretty new and so different from what Pokemon is that there isn't really a definitive set of rules for a Palworld Nuzlocke yet, at least not that I could find. And for Yokai Watch, it is way closer to Pokemon in terms of game feel and structure, but I actually lost my copy of the game, and I don't know anything about emulation. So that was also off the table. People have made Nuzlocke rules for other games that aren't creature collectors, like Smash Bros. And even Enter the Gungeon, one of my favorite games ever. But those games, just like Palworld, are too different from Pokemon that the challenge doesn't really feel the same to me. Thankfully though, I managed to find a creature collector that I not only fell in love with as a whole, but after I beat it, the idea of doing a Nuzlocke in it immediately came to my mind, which is why I did my very first Nuzlocke in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Okay, so even though my channel isn't very big, I'm sure this video will bring in Pokemon people who have no idea what this game is, so I'm gonna be really quick here. The Like a Dragon games are a continuation / successor to the Yakuza series, a series of games where you're on a journey to find out how much blunt force trauma the average Japanese male can withstand. However, unlike the Yakuza games, which were basically 3D beat-em-ups, the two main Like a Dragon games take the form of turn-based RPGs. Now, first of all, no, this Nuzlocke isn't as simple as, if a party member dies, I can't use them ever again, because, like I said, the game is way too different from Pokemon to suit what I'm looking for in my Nuzlocke, and you only have 10 party members anyway, so there wouldn't even be a whole lot going on in terms of people joining or dying. No, in fact, my Nuzlocke has pretty much nothing to do with Infinite Wealth's main story at all. The Like a Dragon series is beloved for a lot of reasons, and one of the many is the quality and variety of side content that the games are filled with. You've got stuff like cards, darts, bowling, batting cages, shogi, the game no one knows how to play, and fishing, which are in almost all of the games in one way or another. It's essentially just Japanese Wii Sports, but with a pinch of gambling sprinkled around. But then you've got the weird shit. I'm talking street racing, business tycoons, a hunting simulator, boxing, battle bots, sports team management, Mario Kart, real-time strategy, army builders, slot cars, Coliseum death matches, Crazy Taxi, fucking Tinder, dozens of real-life arcade games that actually exist. I'm not making this shit up. There's like 5 different rhythm games in this series. The newest game is gonna have pirate shit in it. While not all of these are winners, most of them are, and all of them are very well made. And some of these minigames are so filled with content that if they just had a little bit more stuff in them, they could be considered their own games, like the taxi shit or the hunting simulator. And by far, one of the most fleshed out pieces of side content in this entire series, and the focus of my Nuzlocke today, is Infinite Wealth's Sujimon League. Now, the concept of Sujimon was actually introduced in the first Like a Dragon game, and there, it was really only made as a joke. Like a Dragon is filled with references to other RPGs. Sujimon is just one of the more on-the-nose ones, with you literally meeting a guy called Professor Morikasa, yes, that is a tree name, who also goes by the name Sujimon Sensei, and he ends up giving you the Suji Dex, which is the game's bestiary. By the way, there's no cutesy creatures in these games. Sujimon are literally just random dudes you fight in the street. That's basically where the concept begins and ends. I'm pretty sure that the only reason they came up with Sujimon at all was so that their enemy wiki would look more fun and stylized and less like a criminal database, because that is literally what this is. You think Pokédex entries are dark? Look at Chucklehead. This guy's a human trafficker. But when they started working on Infinite Wealth, they decided to take this joke and expanded it into an entire Pokemon clone with its own unique gameplay, a self-contained story and cast of characters, gyms, type advantages, evolution, integration with other aspects of the game outside of its main gameplay, and 135 different Sujimon to catch in an optional side mode that you get for free. And if you couldn't tell by now, this side mode absolutely hooked me. When I found out about this shit, I instantly looked online absolutely everywhere I could to see if anyone had already done a Sujimon Nuzlocke to see what kinds of rules I would need to follow. But I found nothing. I couldn't find anything on YouTube, Twitch, not even on fucking Reddit. As far as I can tell, no one has even considered doing a Nuzlocke in this game. But the idea of doing a Sujimon Nuzlocke sounded so fun to me that I decided I would just make the rules myself. This video isn't just about me attempting my first Nuzlocke. I'm also going to be sharing the rules I ended up making for my first run, as well as the new rules I made after I realized how fucking terrible the first ones were. Speaking of the rules, if you know anything about Nuzlockes, I'm sure there are some I've included that you've come to expect. I have to beat all 4 gyms and the champion, I have to name every Sujimon I catch, and of course,
If he dies, he dies.
those are all pretty self-explanatory. However, in terms of when the challenge ends, I'm not just going up until I beat the champion. Because Sujimon is a side mode and is thus relatively short compared to an actual Pokemon game, I'm moving the goalpost back a bit so that I have to beat every stadium challenge and the secret final boss that unlocks after beating the champion. Oh, whoever could that be? Here's another relatively obvious rule. DLC Sujimon are banned because these things are literally just instant win buttons, and a handful of them are animals and women, which completely flies in the face of what Sujimon translates to. You also have to do the run on a new save that isn't on New Game Plus, since it carries over your trainer rank and Sujimon from your past game. This does unfortunately mean that you have to do a lot of stuff before you can even start the Nuzlocke, but once you get to the Anaconda Shopping Center, you can just make a save file right outside and you can load that at any time you want to do the Nuzlocke. Then I added a rule that after gaining access to the side mode, aside from one exception I'll get to later, I'm not allowed to progress the main story at all to avoid being over-leveled, since normal street fights are still a thing in Sujimon, and they don't scale with you. But this does mean if you're looking to play Infinite Wealth and don't want me to spoil anything, you don't have to worry because I talk about pretty much nothing outside of Sujimon in this video. The main story and other side quests are free for you to experience on your own. I debated for a while whether or not Sujimon should be banned, since you get it for free by walking past Suji spots, which are essentially just PCs from Pokemon, and I didn't want the challenge to be easily exploitable. Something that I failed to do, and you'll see that in the later bits of this challenge. But I decided to keep it because the game itself caps your level for you according to what gym you're on. Plus, I watched a ton of Pokemon Nuzlockes while coming up for the rules for this challenge, and I found out that Pokemon Nuzlockers actually use cheat codes to give themselves infinite amounts of XP candy to avoid grinding, so if it's good enough for them, then I guess it's good enough for me. All of that was very easy to come up with. Where I struggled with making rules was how to limit catching. Infinite Welt's map isn't sectioned off by routes like Pokemon, and there aren't enough specific areas for me to get a reasonable amount of Sujimon if I were to just catch one per area. What made this harder is that there are so many different ways you can get Sujimon in this game. The main way the game wants you to obtain them is through raid spots, which are points on the map where Sujimon of a specific type will spawn. Then after fighting them, you're able to catch one and add it to your team. However, you can also catch Sujimon from normal overworld battles outside of raids. Trainers you fight will also just give you a Sujimon for free after beating them, and to top it all off, there's straight up gacha machines that get you Sujimon by the boatload. I originally thought I could just limit myself to only catching one Sujimon per raid point, which could totally work, but because I can't progress through the story, the raids almost never have anything worth catching and have very little in terms of variety. Plus, there's only like 30 raid spots, and while that may be enough for a Pokemon Nuzlocke, trust me, it's not enough for Sujimon. Ultimately, I settled on being able to catch anything I wanted from raids as much as I want, mainly because the legitimacy of this first Nuzlocke wasn't too big of a concern for me, since I was using it to get a feel for my rule set, but also because of how evolution works in this game. If I'm being honest, evolving Sujimon is really easy. You can get a fully evolved team relatively quickly, but because of the Nuzlocke rules, evolution gets exponentially harder to do. In order to evolve any Sujimon in this game, you first need to awaken them, and this is done by feeding them other similar Sujimon down to the same evolution stage or Suji League committee agents who, because of another rule I set that I will get to, are in very limited supply, and because final evolutions are basically required for the late game, I need something to awaken my guys in some way, so I'm allowing myself to catch as many Sujimon as I want, at least for this first run. In terms of overworld fights and gifts from trainers, I made it so that I'm allowed to keep those, but only for the sake of using them as awakening fodder. They can't be put on my team whatsoever. I originally thought the gacha machines were going to be the hardest thing to regulate, but it was actually really easy. The gacha machines use tickets, which you get from beating trainers, doing stadium challenges, or walking past Suji spots, and there are multiple gacha tiers, each with their own tickets. You've got the common and type-specific gachas that both use common tickets, the Japanese Master Gacha that gives you rare Sujimon you can't catch normally since they only appear in Japan, and the Kiwami Master Gacha which only gives you the 5 legendary Sujimon. My plan was to ban the 2 common gacha tiers, but leave the Japan and Kiwami Master Gachas open for use, and that may sound weird considering they both give you way better Sujimon than the common ones, but the tickets for the common gachas are so easy to get that by the end of my Nuzlocke, I had over 700 of them. In contrast, the Japan Master tickets, especially in the early game, are way rarer than the common tickets. Plus, I wanted to be able to show off as many Sujimon as I could in this video for people who haven't played this game before. Keeping the Kiwami tickets may also sound like I'm just leaving the door open for people to get a full team of legendary Sujimon and steamroll the whole challenge, and I did consider that, but the only way to get the Kiwami tickets is by beating the legendary Sujimon in a raid, which is not only a rare spawn on its own, but they're also extremely over-leveled. So much so that they're a higher level than the final boss of the main game. Okay, so I know I said legendary Sujimon raids are really rare, but I've got 1, 2, 3, that's just one type, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of these spawned in at once. And I'm sure if there were any dark type ones active, there would probably be another legendary somewhere. So yeah, I kept it in. Not only because it's basically impossible to get one anyway, but I figured if you could somehow manage to beat one of these guys, you deserve to have them on your team. And those are the basic rules for the challenge, at least the ones that are relevant right now. There are a few more that I'll get to later. Again, these aren't the new rules that I've set. You can probably see lots of issues with these, even if you haven't played this game at all. But again, this was not only my first Nuzlocke, ever, but my first experience making the rules for one, so just cut me a little slack here. There are some points where I change the rules mid-run, so I'll bring attention to those when they happen, just so you understand why I start doing things a little bit differently. So now that I've finally explained everything, for now, I'm finally gonna get into talking about the actual run. And just so you know, I actually streamed my entire Nuzlocke right here on my channel. There's a lot of stuff that happened in those streams that I don't mention in this video, so go check those out if you want to see the full run. I don't have a set streaming schedule right now. I'm just trying to stream whenever I need footage for a video, since it not only gets you guys something to watch while I work on stuff behind the scenes, but it also helps me make that stuff, so it's a win-win for everybody. We're gonna get started here and play Yakuza Dead Souls. Let's flip over to the title screen. Hell yeah. Look at that. We're here. We're really here. I am still in school, so I'm gonna try and stream at least once every week. No promises, but hopefully I can get something more concrete in the future. Anyway, the story begins with our protagonist Ichiban Kasuga working a 9-to-5 job like an upstanding citizen. Then a bunch of other stuff happens until Chapter 4 of the game, where he and his party, consisting of the greatest Yakuza legend that ever lived, and some random taxi driver that tried to rob him at gunpoint, go to the Anaconda shopping center. While there, they run into Morikasa, who brings them down to the Tsujigami PC shop, which has an entire stadium hidden underneath it. We also get a good look at King, the champion of the Tsuji League, and Jack, one of the members of the elite... discreet 4. I don't think I can call anything about this game discreet. Morikasa then introduces me to Yasuo Sadachi and his students Karaki and Yokawa. These guys are actually in previous games, by the way. I love how this series has characters and overarching sub-stories that span multiple games. Seeing these guys show up in this side mode when I first played this game, it just put a huge smile on my face. Turns out, these guys are going to act as my first team members. I did debate on whether or not I should be allowed to use Sadachi and his students, since I do get an actual starter soon, and it felt a bit weird to have 4 starters, but I settled on it being fine to use them, at least for the start of the run. I ended up replacing pretty much all of these guys eventually anyway. Sadachi isn't a bad Sujimon whatsoever, but Karaki and Yokawa kinda suck, so once I replaced them, I never used them again. I also didn't name them, since both I and the game still call them by their normal names anyway, and I didn't really catch them, they just kinda follow me, so I figured at least for these 3, names are optional. Anyway, after they join, Morikasa forces me into my first proper Sujimon battle, and... oh, fuck, I didn't explain how battles work. Okay, I'm gonna keep this as short as possible so that we can actually get into this. Your team can have up to 6 Sujimon on it who all have one of this game's 5 different types, which do have their own names, but I'm just gonna call them Fire, Water, Grass, Light, and Dark. This is what the type matchups look like. It speaks for itself. Every single Sujimon battle basically plays like a Pokemon triple battle, with a few minor differences. On your turn, you get to do 2 things, swap and attack. Swapping allows you to switch the position of any 2 Sujimon on your team, however, you can only swap once per turn, and your turn ends immediately once you attack. It's mainly for putting a Sujimon in reserve if you don't want it to get hit, or moving it to a different spot to make use of type advantages and positioning bonuses, since they not only hit the Sujimon in front of them, but also whatever ones are next to it for a little less damage. The turn order depends on whose SP bar fills up the fastest, and the rate your SP bar fills depends on the cumulative speed stats of the 3 Sujimon you have out in front. Their speed stats also still contribute to the bar, even if they're dead. Attacks all cost some amount of SP, and your bar will start draining from wherever it's left afterwards, so being smart with what moves you use and having Sujimon with high enough speed stats can let you attack multiple times before the opponent can even react. Each Sujimon really only has 1 attack each, with it correlating to their type, but rarer or more evolved Sujimon tend to have a second ability which can be a way more powerful attack, or a move that heals the Sujimon you have out in battle. However, these cost MP instead of SP, which is represented by this bar here. The bar fills up whenever you attack, and the more damage you deal, the more MP you get. Just like normal attacks, MP skills cost varying amounts of MP, but no matter how much MP the move costs, using an MP skill will always fully drain your SP bar. MP skills will also always hit every opposing Sujimon, even ones that would be out of range from a normal attack, but while normal attacks are always guaranteed to hit all of their targets for consistent damage, the accuracy of an MP skill or the potency of healing depends on a wheel spin. It isn't luck-based though, the wheel stops immediately when you tell it to. Okay, that's the last major explanation I'm gonna do in this video. So now that battles have been explained, I kicked the tutorial's ass, and it's revealed that Morikasa was the original champion of the Tsuji League before being banned from competing after the money-hungry Tsuji League committee came in and took control over the stadium. Morikasa then drags Ichiban outside and begs him to take down the Tsuji League by beating King to make it the fun, wholesome, totally legal sport it once was, and he reluctantly agrees. And with that, I get to pick my starter. We've got a Grass Snake, a Jabber Jobber, and a Gangpunk. I picked the Grass Snake since Sadachi is already a fire type, and grass types tend to have healing abilities, which I'm sure you can imagine will be extremely useful for my Nuzlocke, especially since there aren't items or anything in this game. So I beat the shit out of him, gave him a box of chocolates that I'm convinced is drugged in some way, and Wilter was added to my team. So now that the run is officially started, I had two goals. Find 2 more Sujimon to add to my team, and get my trainer rank up by fighting other trainers so I can challenge the first gym. So I hit the town doing a few low-level trainer fights that were no problem whatsoever, complained about the overuse of auto-tune in the English versions of some of the karaoke songs. It's just auto-tune. And it's bad auto-tune. And it's his only song, which is so stupid.
Maybe the next time I love you, you could be the only one.
And I went to a few raids to catch some new Sujimon, and wow, were these things harder than I thought they would be. Just fighting 3 guys was nearly impossible since pretty much every raid is a higher level than my party right now. Thankfully, I managed to brute force my way through a lot of them with Kiryu since he's overpowered as shit in this game. My biggest issue was that I didn't actually know what was worth catching. My first time playing through this game, I just used DLC Sujimon, so I had no idea what Sujimon would be good additions to my team. I didn't look anything up though, and I'm glad I didn't, because figuring out what Sujimon I liked, or which were broken as hell, was an incredibly fun part of this run for me. Anyway, after some running around, I caught a lone wolf that I named Blade Wolf since I played Metal Gear Rising for the billionth time not too long before playing this, and he filled the role of my water type, so now I had every type covered and just had to find 1 more Sujimon to complete my team, which I got in the form of a hateful Hakeyoi, I think is how you say that, that I named Big Low. Your name's gonna be... Low. Low. Big Low. There we go. Okay. I don't know why I called him that, because Big Low is the name of a character from Yakuza 6, but I know I wasn't thinking about him at the time, and he looks nothing like this. I think I was just really struggling to come up with a name, not just because it feels way weirder to name people who already have names when you catch them than cartoon animals, but also because this character limit for making the names is bullshit. This thing caps out at like 10 to 12 characters. How am I supposed to come up with a cool name with no space to work with? Palworld's names could be so long that the limit was practically non-existent, so I could name my pals literally anything I wanted, like Dick Grayson, Pika Chungus, Frank Sriracha, FurAffinity.com, names that immediately came to my mind when I looked at them, but here, I can't do that! Also, despite being an M-rated game, there's a lot of censorship for what you can and can't name your Sujimon, which is probably because of Dondoko Island's online functionality where you can fight other people's Sujimon teams, but why can't I name my blackmailer daemon Big Smoke? What's wrong with that name? Anyway, I went out and caught more grass snakes to evolve Wilter, and while doing that, I somehow managed to get a Japanese master ticket from a Suji spot. These things are so rare to get at this point in the run that I didn't even know you could get them, but I instantly used it and got a Bond Scientist that I named I Am Groot. I did take Wilter off the team solely because he was really weak at the moment, and I didn't really feel like losing my starter so early into the run, so I put I Am Groot on the team and headed for the first gym where- fuck off, Asakura! Anyway, Ichiban and his gang of freaks enter the Light-type gym, the Regal Jack Hotel, and yes, Jack isn't just a discrete form member, he's also the gym leader. In fact, they all are, which honestly makes more sense than them being their own thing like in Pokemon. I've always seen the Elite Four as nothing more than glorified gym leaders with higher leveled teams. The gym leaders are built up as the masters of their respective teams, at least to me, so much so that they run the places where people learn to use and fight against them, but for some reason, the Elite Four, whose teams also revolve around one type, are considered better than them or different just because? What do they even do if they aren't gym trainers? Just stand around and wait for random 10-year-olds to show up and beat them? And they have actually done this before with Larry and Scarlet and Violet, and again, it makes total sense that he would be in the Elite Four since he's considered a master with normal types. Except he uses a completely different type here. Are you fucking kidding me? So, unlike in Pokemon, there aren't any puzzles here. You just fight 2 trainers and then the discrete form member, and that's pretty much the same across all 4 gyms. I don't mind it too much though, since, again, this is an optional side mode. The fact that this is as extensive as it is now is enough to make me praise it. Anyway, given that Jack's grunts have teams mostly comprised of low-level first evolution Sujimon, they weren't hard at all. I did have one close call with I Am Groot, but aside from that, no one was lost. Although for some reason, despite this being a light-type gym, the first trainer has a very dark-type-centric team. No idea why, and I'm pretty sure no other gym has a trainer like this. It's very odd. So now it's time to fight Jack. I do really like how Jack is characterized here, by the way. He's essentially just a satire of every rich person ever. They don't even try to make him likable, he's just an asshole, but in the funniest way possible. How did you know I have such a thinly veiled fetish for breaking the will of the uppity poors? Jesus Christ. I do find it cool how they use bonds as a way to explain how Jack is the weakest of the 4. With the other members, you can understand to some extent how they might form bonds with their Sujimon that make them fight harder. Whether or not those bonds can be considered healthy is debatable, but Jack, having bought all of his Sujimon rather than catch them himself, doesn't have a bond of any kind with them. It's a real neat thing to think about. Also, there is an actual bond stat in the game. It does literally nothing in terms of my Nuzlocke, so hell yeah! Let's buy our way to the top! Jack isn't really hard at all. I mean, this is the first gym, but I was playing really sloppily in this fight since the run thus far has been pretty easy. Yukawa almost got one-shot by Jack's dungeon troll, and Sadachi somehow managed to survive an MP skill with the smallest amount of health possible, but he managed to deal enough damage so Big Lo could end the fight with a coconut chop, and 0 deaths in the first gym. Hell yes! After beating Jack, King walks in with the rest of the discrete 4, Queen, Ace, and Joker. It's dumb, I know. King then asks Ichiban for his name before leaving, and Queen invites him to challenge her at her water-type gym, claiming it to be, in her words, an ode to the female form in all its glory. It's a hotel pool full of mostly men. And now that I've beaten the first gym, I've gotten 3 things that are essential for my Nuzlocke. First, I got 10 Suji League committee agents, which you get for beating each of the 4 gyms. Like I said earlier, these guys are the only other thing you can use to awaken your Sujimon aside from exact copies of them. But since they're very limited, I've got to be smart with who I use them on. Then there's the stadium challenges, which are all mandatory for my run. Thankfully, I can do them whenever I want, so I saved all of these for the end of the run. And finally, the Suji Master job. So, this is the thing that I mentioned I would need to progress a little bit of the main story for, since I can't actually swap jobs right now until I get to Chapter 5, meaning I'd have to go through an entire main story dungeon and fight Dwight at the end of it, but I didn't have a problem with that. I don't even really have a problem with the job combat-wise. It's actually pretty good, since it revolves heavily around elemental damage, which no other job really does. It's just that, personally, for a character-exclusive job that you have to go out of your way to get, this was one of the biggest disappointments for me in the whole game. Conceptually, this thing is awesome. The game markets it as a job that, rather than having equipable weapons, lets you assign a team of 1 Sujimon from each type to summon into the normal street fights to fight alongside you. That sounds fucking awesome! Originally, I thought it would function like how Pound Mates do, where you summon them in as an extra party member, attacking on their own while Ichiban's moveset focuses on buffs or healing to support the team. Or if they wanted to get really experimental, maybe your Sujimon could take the place of Ichimon entirely and you control them yourself, with each one having sort of a mini moveset that mostly caters to their elemental typing, and you being able to swap between them like how you can swap party members with the tag out function. Hell, because pretty much all of these guys can be fought in the street already, the Suji Dex already has movesets and stats that you could just copy-paste over with maybe a few tweaks here and there. The idea is sound. But no, this class is no different from every other job in the game. The Sujimon you bring with you function exactly the same as a weapon does. They are purely cosmetic and only serve to boost your attacking power. However, unlike weapons that boost your stats as a whole, the Sujimon you equip only boost 2 moves each. And I feel like, at the very least, they could have given you 2 different moves depending on what Sujimon you equip, since in battles, they have 2 moves. So, for example, if I were to equip Sadachi, I would get Sadachi Kick and Flaming Footwork, effectively letting you build your own moveset. Hell, even if they functioned the same, I wouldn't care, but instead, every Sujimon uses the same generic elemental moves, whether or not they suit them. Fire, Water, and Light all have attacking moves that are pretty much the same across all 3 types. Grass types only get to use healing moves, and Dark types get to occasionally poison people and fail to put them to sleep. You do have 2 super moves for the job, but they aren't cool either. I don't even think your Sujimon affect how strong these ones are. One lets you revive every down teammate with half health, which is admittedly pretty good, and the other creates a spirit bomb by killing all of your Sujimon, which means I can't even use the damn thing. I'm still going to use the job since my Nuzlocke makes it way harder for me to get really good Sujimon, and again, it's not too bad in combat, I just really hate how boring this thing is. Anyway, I played through what I had to of the main story, unlocking not just Sujimancer, but also gender diversity. I also used my committee agents and a bit of raid farming to get Big Low, Wilter, and Blade Wolf up to their final forms. And I also recreated the most iconic characters in this series with a scarred Yakuza that I named Kiryu, a Shiver that I called Majima, and a gifted Gatherer I called Boogie Bag. The gang's all here! It was also during my grinding that I discovered who the best Sujimon in the entire game is. My Uber Eats delivery guy. That's not sarcasm, by the way. I summoned Charlie so many times during this run to just barely win some fights that I absolutely shouldn't have. This is even more proof that bikes are the most powerful weapons in these games. Since nobody died yet, there isn't a whole lot to talk about when it comes to preparation for the next gym. I mostly just fought a bunch of trainers and leveled up my Sujimon. I even fought some trainers that were stronger than me, and aside from a few close calls, they didn't give me any issues either. So I headed over to Queen's Resort to get my next gym badge. Getting there was a bit of a pain though, since I had to sneak through the beach, which is full of pretty powerful enemies, and then swim around this annoying ass wall, which makes it really easy to tell that this gym was kinda just dropped here late in development. It feels pretty out of place. But hey, if you're mad this game doesn't have gym challenges, there you go! A wall! The Sadachi trio all start simping, which is very funny, and we rush in to take on the water-type gym. Because Jack's gym was so easy, I was pretty confident going into this gym, so much so that pretty much no one on my team was fully leveled. I still managed to get through the first trainer with no casualties though, and started the second one expecting to also breeze through it. It started with a misclick, causing me to attack with Boogie Bag, who deals next to no damage. And then, several misplays and thoughtless moves later, Sadachi, Kiryu, and Boogie Bag are all barely holding it together after getting hit with an MP skill. And because I massively underestimated how strong Coconut Job is, Sadachi was killed when he had literally no reason to be. The fact that Sadachi, out of everyone, was the first death really fucking stung. Not only because he was one of my strongest team members at the time, but since he's a character in the story, I had to watch his smiling face in every cutscene, cursed to watch as his body is puppeteered in front of me, taunting me for my failure as a trainer for the rest of the run. And even after my team barely scraped past the second trainer, Queen was more than happy to kick me while I was down. Despite being a water-type gym, Queen opened the fight with a dojo master who brought both of my grass types down to half health with one swing each. Thankfully, Kiryu managed to take out him and the rest of Queen's opening team with his strong as fuck MP skill, leaving only 3 guys left to take down. But because I was too scared to send out I Am Groot, who honestly probably could have taken them down easily, Queen's Death Sentencer ended up killing Kiryu, Boogie Bag, and Wilter, literally gunning down half my team, leaving me with Karaki, who has like no health, Big Lo, who's at a type disadvantage here, and I Am Groot, who's already barely holding on. Somehow, I managed to win without anyone else dying, but holy shit, everything went as wrong as it possibly could have in this gym. You can tell I was really bummed out here since 2 of the Sujimon I used to replace my team were a Grounds Reaper that I called Depression and a Forsaken Samurai that I called Revenge, since he had the same move that Queen used to kill half my team. I think I wanted to use the move myself and be like, this is for my previous team, or something stupid like that. Anyway, after all of that, I decided to head off to Revolve to process everything that happened with some karaoke. After paying my respects to the ones we've lost, I went out to rebuild my team, catching a few Grounds Reapers to evolve Depression, and finally replacing Yukawa with a self-proclaimed witch. Because even in a game where all of the enemies are definitively male, they've gotta follow the Pokemon trend of having at least one that's overtly feminine. I wanted to give it a Sailor Moon-esque name, but I couldn't think of anything that sounded good and fit the character limit, so it's just Sailor. I also used a few of my tickets and immediately got Kiryu back, as well as a replacement for Karaki with a high necromancer I named Kim Jimble. And just to be safe, I did a bunch of extra fights just to get some decent replacements for my team. After what happened in the last gym, I wanted to be prepared for anything. Anyway, it's Fire Gym time, baby, led by Ace this time, who apparently used to be Morikasa's rival back in the day. Because the references have yet to stop. There is a pretty funny joke about how this gym is actually just a gym, like where people train their Sujimon for battles. It's another fun little jab at Pokemon tropes, but not one worth another rant from me like the Elite Four, so I'll move on. My team absolutely tore through Ace's students. Kiryu 2 and Revenge basically pulled all of the weight in these fights, and with a little help from Big Lo, they didn't stand a chance. Ace, on the other hand, he wasn't as forgiving. Unlike the other Discreet 4 members, Ace's team isn't mainly focused on his gym's typing, or any typing for that matter. His team is a perfectly even mix of fire, grass, and light for whatever reason. His opening team is also pretty damn fast, and after only one attack from me, Ace already had Kiryu 2 one hit away from death. Revenge and Big Lo weren't exactly helping with the speed issue, since both of them are extremely slow and use up so much SP. My team's general lack of speed meant Ace ended up killing Big Lo and Sailor with an MP skill. My team was really struggling at this point, and I was convinced that at least one other person was going to die. But with Ace's remaining Sujimon being mostly light types, I rationed my SP strategically and managed to charge up enough MP to use Kim Jimble to wipe out the rest of Ace's team with Midnight Mischief. Are you fucking kidding me? Well, on the bright side at least, I only lost 3 Sujimon this time, which is an improvement. That means that I should only lose 2 Sujimon at the next gym, right? Yeah, that sounds right. After beating Ace, he explains why Morikasa was banished by the Suji League after they came into power, and that he wants to keep the original spirit of the Suji League alive as much as he can. Morikasa himself was apparently watching from the sidelines, and he and Ace have a nice conversation about their thoughts on how the league has changed over the years, after which, Ace decides that he'll help me train my Sujimon for the Dark-type gym. Sadachi refuses because of his pride as a teacher, but Karaki and Yukawa immediately agree to train under Ace, and honestly, dude, you can keep them. I don't really care about those two right now. Ace then warns me about Joker, the final member of the Discreet 4, and how he isn't afraid of using underhanded tactics to get an advantage, and as Sadachi and I leave, it's revealed that Joker may already be plotting something nefarious. Ooh. The recruiting process for the Dark-type gym wasn't any different from the previous 3, and I don't just want to repeat myself over and over, so instead, I'm gonna take this time to talk a bit more in depth about some of the Sujimon in this game. A little analysis of the freaks and weirdos you can bribe into fighting to the death, starting, funnily enough, with the 3 starters. Now, I'm gonna be honest, none of the first stage evolutions are really interesting, combat-wise or design-wise. Evolution in Sujimon, realistically, is just you know, putting more clothes on, or less in some cases, so first stage Sujimon mostly just look bland in comparison to their later stages. My favorite of these three, though, is probably Gangpunk, just because he looks the least like a normal guy, in my opinion. I don't really care all that much about the middle evolutions, and really, who does? But the final evolutions, dude, these are awesome as hell. And the names, too. Pandora's Boxer, Hemlock Dock, and Gang Lord. Love these guys, all three of them. I know Sailor didn't end up doing a whole lot, but I think the self-proclaimed witch evolution line is really creative since the whole thing is just a magical girl transformation. I don't really care about Sailor Moon or anime in general, but stuff like this is funny and I can't say I don't like it. And judging by other runs I've done in this game, Sparkle Juggernaut is actually pretty good in battle, shockingly so for being a healer. Squirmworm is one of my favorite Sujimon. He's a very obvious reference to Metapod from Pokémon, just without the metamorphosis when he evolves. The rest of his line stays in the sleeping bag, unfortunately, but I still like all of their designs. Also, his evolutions throw up lava for some reason, and yet they're all still grass type. The Beach Baller line is also really fun. These guys always stick out in my mind, but one evolution line that I fell in love with because of this Nuzlocke is Depression's line. Not only because they're actually pretty fucking strong, as you'll soon see, but the final evolution, despite not changing that much from Grounds Reaper, is such a whiplash-inducing change. I don't even think his name is a pun, he's just called Executioner. Probably my least favorite evolution line in the game is the Gains Chaser line. The final evolution is fine. I think it would have worked better as a middle evolution, but god, the first two. I mean, they're literally the exact same apart from the pants. I genuinely forget which one is which all the time. My favorite evolution line in the game, though, is the Bronze Agent line. These guys are awesome. The whole statue street performer idea for an enemy is great, and the evolution from bronze to silver and then gold, it's obvious, yeah, but it works really well. I would have absolutely used one during my Nuzlocke if they didn't just suck ass in combat. These guys are tied with Big Low's line for the slowest Sujimon in the game, and like, I get it, they're literal statues, but you'd think they'd balance out how slow they are by making them super strong or tanky like Big Low, but they aren't good at those either, they're just really bad. There are a bunch of Sujimon who don't evolve, but honestly, they're pretty hit or miss most of the time. Like, I like Scarred Yakuza, Kiryu and Kiri 2 were really helpful during the run, but it's the same problem I have with first evolutions, it's just a dude. Bond Scientist and Invested Vagabond are also pretty meh as well, but then there's guys like Mod Goblin, Sewer Rat, Jetstream Samurai, nice reference, Death's Head, Nicotine Lich. These guys are all awesome looking. But what sucks about the Sujimon that don't evolve is that for most of them, their stats are really bad for some reason, and since they don't evolve, they can't really do anything about it. Bakken Alpha is one of my favorite Sujimon designs, but his stats are so painfully below average that I never use him. I haven't mentioned them yet, but this game does have some Sujimon that can equate to pseudo-legendaries. They can only be obtained from the gacha machines, and there are 2 for each type. And they're all kind of whatever. Combat-wise, they're all broken, but design-wise, again, it's hit or miss for me. A lot of them are based on other Sujimon, like Suji Machine and Suji Surfer. They don't look bad necessarily, but when you compare Suji Surfer to Jaws of Death, I don't think anyone would say he looks cooler. The ones that are completely unique designs, however, like Suji Fruit and Suji Delinquent, are pretty cool looking. I just wish they all had actual names instead of just Suji and then what they are. I like everything else about them though, especially the crowns and belts they all have. It's a great thing to unify them all without distracting from the rest of the design too much. The legendaries though, I'm just gonna be real, I don't really like any of these guys. Their naming scheme is somehow even worse than the pseudo-legendaries. They're all just Kiwami color, and I hate it. Design-wise, I mean, Kiwami Green is funny, I guess, and Kiwami Gold is the only one that I'd say has an actually good design with him being some kind of sun god, but the rest of them just look like they had random assets slapped onto them with no real care. And I'm sorry, the brightly colored and weirdly shiny skin just looks bad to me. Every time I see these guys, I don't feel like I'm playing Yakuza anymore. I feel like I'm watching a YouTube Kids video. I also feel like it's worth mentioning that not every Sujimon in the game is catchable. I get why some enemies aren't catchable, like bosses or the stilt clowns, and I also get wanting to stick with the more interesting designs rather than normal-looking businessmen or homeless people, but there's a lot of enemies that I feel like would have been great additions to the mode. For one, pretty much every Sujimon that's exclusive to Japan can't be caught since the Suji League is only in Hawaii. Yeah, we have the Japanese Master Gacha, but it only brings over 10 of them, and none of them get evolution lines. Which sucks, because Japan has a ton of awesome Sujimon that I would have loved to be able to use, like Urbane Legend, Massacre Mascot, Dark Sweeper, Invulnerable Board, Otaku at Arms, Welt Razor, and I can keep going. There are even enemies in Hawaii that aren't catchable, and I can't think of a good reason why. I find it insane that they put in both Sandbagger and Sewer Rat, who are literally the exact same model with a different hat, when they could have added Juggalo, Big Payback, Undertaker, Bohemiarch, as well as a bunch of other guys to give the single-stage Sujimon some evolution lines. I don't think they'll ever bring back the Sujimon League in future games, since aside from a few examples, they usually leave the major side content in the game it was made for, but if they do, I really hope they add in a good chunk of new Sujimon to spice things up. Anyway, going back to the Nuzlocke, Sadachi and I head back to Ace's gym and find out that Joker burst in and kidnapped Karaki and Yukawa. Again, like, you can keep them, dude. Out of fear for his students, Sadachi finally agrees to train under Ace, after which he achieves Murderous Heat, allowing him to transform into Super Sadachi, because this game refuses to let me live his death down! Murderous Heat is essentially just Mega Evolutions from Pokemon. Your Sujimon gets a major stat boost and sometimes even gets new moves, putting them on the same level as a Pseudo-Legendary. The only differences are that they don't get a new form, which kinda sucks, but they also stay in their super form forever, and you can have multiple of them at once. I do want to bring up one thing about Murderous Heat that I find a little odd, though. Ignoring Sadachi, each type has one Sujimon that can reach Murderous Heat, and what's nice about this is that each of the starter Sujimon represents their type's super form. Except for Hemlock Dock. The Grass-type super form goes to Executioner, which does make me love it that much more, but I mean, I guess they're also following the Pokemon trend of the grass starters sucking ass compared to the other two. Unfortunately, even though Sadachi gets his super form right now, I can't actually get any others until I beat Joker's gym, which sucks, but it is what it is. Before I head off to Joker's gym, Morikasa warns me that Joker used to be a Sujimon himself, once considered the strongest man in Hawaii. I think that's really cool, by the way. The idea that Joker was a Sujimon that climbed the ranks into becoming one of the greatest trainers there is. It's something you can really only do with a concept as stupid as Pokemon but with men. So, here's what the team is looking like. We've still got Kiryu 2 and Kim Jimble, as well as Depression finally getting some time in the spotlight now that he's evolved, as well as 3 newcomers with Nugget, the Moon and Nugget Messiah, another favorite Sujimon of mine, Roy Fire Emblem, the Heavenly Host, and Doc Lewis, the Championship Wrecker. So with my team all set, it's time to take on the final gym. We kick in the door, Sadachi acts like a fucking badass, god I miss him, and we start the first battle. So Joker's gym is a bit different from the previous 3. We're not just fighting 2 trainers this time. We're fighting 3 of them. But I have to battle all of them in a row without my team getting healed between fights. That may not sound like a big issue, especially since their teams aren't really that strong, but it does mean that I have to stay on top of healing my team more, especially in the final battle. I guess this gauntlet of sorts can also be considered a potential example of a gym challenge in this game. Actually, now that I think about it, the Water-type gym had you traverse through the beach and around a wall, the Dark-type gym has you fight a trainer gauntlet, even the Light-type gym forces you to fight Asakura beforehand. Ace, you gotta start brainstorming, dude. Make me do like 10,000 push-ups or something. The first battle was easy as hell. Doc Lewis soloed the whole thing, and they did nothing to us in return. And since my MP is also being carried over between fights, Kim Jimble was able to open the second battle with Midnight Mischief so Doc could clean up the stragglers. Aside from Kim, we were going to the third battle with an incredibly strong start. Thankfully, my team was just fast enough so I could get Kim out of the way, and Nugget healed himself and Kiryu to help them survive a Cyclo Swing from the other guy's Lone Wolf. Eventually, it was just down to 2 Sujimon, and my team was looking pretty good, but unfortunately, they were just fast enough to charge up and then use their Mod Goblin's MP skill, which ended up killing Roy, but Depression and Kim Jimble were able to get rid of him without any other casualties, thank God. Now, I didn't really care all that much about Roy, but this does mean that I'm short a Sujimon. It's no big deal, though. I've got a few in reserve. I'll just need to go back out real quick, go to the Suji spot right here in the gym to beef them up a bit, and we should be all good. Oh. Oh no. This posed a problem. I could still swap Roy out for someone else, but none of my other Sujimon were max level. All of them would get killed really easily. Dude, I had a Suji Sumo in there named Leonardo, who I didn't level up at all because I thought my current team would at least get through Joker's goons. The best option I had was Revenge, and he was 10 levels below everyone else. My only hope was to just shove him in the back and hope to God I wouldn't need to use him too much. Joker's team is fucking terrifying. His opening team isn't all that fast, but they hit like a bullet train with Pleatherface in the middle. Kiryu 2 managed to bait out Joker's Executioner so I could hit both the grass types with an MP skill, getting Pleatherface out of there and knocking Executioner and Boomstick Bannerit's health real low. I was doing well for now, but Joker positioned all of his fast guys in the back, so the more of his team I took down, the harder the fight was getting. And then he sent out Tank Commander.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Joker's Tank Commander is the Cynthia's Garchomp of Sujimon, except I'd argue it's even worse here, because at least Cynthia was the champion and Garchomp was a final stage pseudo-legendary. Neither of those factors apply here. Joker is a regular-ass gym leader, and Tank Commander is a regular-ass single-stage Sujimon. The name isn't a fucking joke either. He is tanky as hell. Look at Tank Commander's stats, dude. This thing has more health than fucking Suji Delinquent, and it's just as strong as him, too. The only thing that balances Tank Commander out is his 10 SP attack cost and terrible speed stat, but this guy was surrounded by some of the fastest motherfuckers in this entire game. Bone Cleaver basically cancels out Tank Commander's terrible speed all by himself, and it doesn't even matter that I killed the Slycanthrope, its speed stat still applies, making this thing faster than me! There was nothing I could do against this thing. All of my strong guys were too slow, all of my fast guys were too weak, and Revenge was dead the moment I forced him into this fight, 10 levels below what he should have been. And what sucks the most about this fight is that I almost killed it. I used Doc Lewis's MP skill as a last Hail Mary to hopefully squeeze out a win, and Tank Commander lived off of a sliver of health so tiny that you can't even see it. My entire team was killed, and the fight was over. Now, I didn't implement any kind of rule where wiping meant an instant loss for the Nuzlocke, but I might as well have at this point, because I was right back to square one. All of the Sujimon I poured all of my Sujimunch and committee agents into were gone, and I had very few viable replacements. I didn't want to go out and grind raids or farm tickets again, just to get a team even slightly close to the same power that my last team had. I meandered around a bit, did some sicko snap and crazy delivery to pass some time, and eventually started the painful grinding process that I was all too familiar with at this point. Honestly, I considered just throwing in the towel at this point. And then I remembered something that I completely forgot about when making my original Nuzlocke rules. Infinite Wealth has a few mini-bosses dotted all around the map called Keepers of the City. They have a fixed spawn location, and they're usually tougher than the basic guys you'll run into while walking around. But what's so important about these guys is that not only are most of them final stage Sujimon forms, but also, most of them are catchable. In fact, pretty much all of them are catchable. So I immediately started hunting down as many of them as I could find, dashing across the entire map while searching every single alley I could. Sure, I was still technically grinding, but at least I wasn't fighting the same guys I have been for the past 16 hours. A lot of these guys were also way stronger than me too. I haven't been challenged by any of the street fights since the beginning of the run, so it was a great breath of fresh air to actually have some challenging fights outside of the Sujimon battles. Charlie once again ended up carrying me through basically all of these fights, like a true homie. I wasn't able to catch all of these guys since you aren't guaranteed a chance to catch them after a fight, but I was able to catch a good handful of them, and within a few hours I had caught Murdertron the Extermination Coon, Sharknado the Jaws of Death, and Garbage the Pleatherface, because wow, that speed stat sucks. I even did more raids since I was feeling so much more pumped up, managing to get Depression back while also bringing on Dragon Ball the Clawmander and Disco Dan the Tropical Star. And with just a bit more Sujimunch farming, I was able to level up some of my old Sujimon as well. I now had a good amount of options for who to put on my new team, and with a new focus on speed above all else to help me get more attacks in and hopefully build MP faster while still having a bit of power behind me, here's what I came up with. We've got Disco Dan, Depression 2, Blade Wolf, finally coming back after a long time of not being used, Murdertron, Dragon Ball, and Leonardo. This team was stacked to the teeth, and I knew that if this couldn't beat Joker, then nothing I could sort up would. So I ran back to Joker's gym, thankfully not needing to fight the trainer gauntlet again, and challenged Joker to a rematch. It started terribly, dude. Before Tank Commander even came out, Joker already killed half my team with his Slycanthrope, and by the time he actually came out, I was convinced it was already over. But for some inexplicable reason, I kept going. I managed to bait Joker into focusing on Blade Wolf with his Executioner, and since I was faster now, I could slowly chip away at Tank Commander with Dragon Ball in order to build up enough MP for Blade Wolf to finally take down the rest of his team with a glorious double Rising Slash. 10 Sujimon! I lost 10 Sujimon in this gym! Sadachi and I both run over to save Karaki and Yukawa, and Sadachi reverts back to his original form. But Joker isn't through with us yet. He's done with Sujimon battles. He's ready to throw down, starting an intense battle where... Okay, dude. After that frankly underwhelming fight, King walks in, congratulating me on beating the Discreet 4 and challenging me to the championship fight. Yeah, there's no grass-type gym. All the while, one of his bodyguards fucking shoots Joker out of nowhere! He diffuses the situation before they kill him, and as he starts to leave, Morikasa shows up. He asks King why he chooses to work for the committee, getting a less than satisfactory answer as King leaves. He explains that King was once one of his past students who loved Sujimon more than anyone else, and he can't understand why King would willingly work for the people who are ruining the sport. As we fade away, we see the committee ordering King to beat Ichiban at all costs, and if things go badly, he can shut down the entire stadium with a single button to end the fight without a winner, all to ensure their backers don't lose their bets on King if Ichiban wins. There's a passing remark about King's mother, clearly implying that she's being used as leverage in some way to get King to follow their orders. Seeing that he has no choice, King agrees to do as he's told. Anyway, I got a homeless guy from the gacha machine named Chewbacca. I'm just gonna skip the prep stuff again. No joke, I spent over 8 hours across 2 different streams to prep for the battle against King. Long story short, I fought a few raids, pulled a few gachas, caught a few keepers, I even ran into... I'm gonna be real, that was one of the most cathartic fights I've had in any video game ever. Oh, I can catch him? Cool. KYS, perfect. The only things of note that happened during all of this prep time was that 1, I was now able to evolve Depression 2 and Dragon Ball into their super forms. 2, I found out that you can actually get committee agents from the Japanese Master Gacha, so that was helpful. And 3, in that very same pull, this happened. Oh my god, I got Kiwami Gold? What the fuck? You can get the Kiwamis from the Japan Master Gacha? What? Holy shit! This is like the best light type in the game. This is one of the legendaries that you have to fight a level 60 enemy to get. Holy fuck. Okay, you're on the team. Kiwami Gold. Crazy. Okay. Oh my god, he's 220 speed? Oh, but he cancels out with a 10 SP. That makes sense. I genuinely had no idea that you could get the Kiwamis from any of the other gacha tiers. I thought they were exclusive to their own tier, but apparently not. Now I have How Even, the Kiwami Gold. I will happily take that after all the pain I've been going through. So going into the championship battle, here's the new team. We've got Dragon Ball, Depression 2, and Kiwami Gold, obviously. Hunk the Arminator, Professor Pig the Bone Cleaver, and Gengar the Weeping Archdemon. I swear to God, if this is a repeat of Joker's Gym, I'm going to punch my computer screen. This was probably the longest Sujimon battle in this entire run. Not because King's Sujimon were tanky, but because half of this fight is just me thinking out every single move I made, making sure I used my SP wisely, swapping out my Sujimon accordingly, and prioritizing healing with Dragon Ball and Kiwami Gold whenever I could. I really wish I had more to talk about when it comes to this fight, since it is the championship fight, but honestly, I've got nothing, for all the right reasons. I was at my absolute peak during this over 10-minute long fight. Things did get dicey with King's big endgame hunter nearly wiping out my front line, and King had a Suji machine on his team, which absolutely could have caused some issues, but I kept calm, played it safe, and I beat King with absolutely 0 deaths whatsoever. God, that feels so good to say again. As Ichiban and the gang celebrate the victory, King looks down at the button and throws it away, refusing to give in to the committee's demands. But the committee isn't through with us yet. They're done with Sujimon battles. They're ready to throw down. I'm getting deja vu right now. Well, this fight should be a piece of cake. I mean, Joker's fight was easy as hell, and you can fight King immediately after leaving Joker's gym, so oh my god. Oh, they're a higher level than me. Oh, this is bad. Stop! Ichiban! Huh. This might be a problem. I don't know why the Suji League committee agents are triple the level of Joker and his goons, but this fight almost seemed impossible. The only reason I was able to beat these guys was because they're weak to electric damage, so I tanked as much damage as I could with Kiryu, sent out Charlie to keep my team alive, and spammed the shit out of Kiwami Gold until they died. And now that the League has been restored to its former glory, there's still one thing left I have to do. The stadium challenges. 3 different categories, 9 different challenges, dozens of Sujimon to fight, and I'm skipping basically all of it in this script. Sorry, but this video is way too long right now, and I'm struggling to talk about the battles in an interesting way. Besides, my team was max level at this point, so basically all of these challenges were over before they started. Even the rematches against the Discrete 4 weren't an issue. Yeah, their teams were different, and they all had their type Super Sujimon, but I still got past all of them with everyone alive and well, probably because Joker didn't have Tank Commander this time. But with all the challenges done, Morikasa offers me one final challenge. The Divine League. 5 consecutive Sujimon battles against him and King, as well as 3 trainers with some of the strongest Sujimon in the entire game, including the Sujis and Kiwamis. Real quick, I need to point out something about these fights. In this last category of the stadium challenges, which this league and the rematches with the Discrete 4 are in, the battles are back-to-back, just like with the trainers in Joker's gym, but since these teams are all basically max level, your Sujimon do get their health back between fights, whereas in Joker's gym, they didn't. This does mean that if a Sujimon dies, they will come back in the next fight, and there isn't really a way around that, so for these fights, I've made the rule that if a Sujimon dies, you can still use them in the following fights, you just have to get rid of them once you finish the gauntlet. Anyway, I went out to make some quick preparations for the Divine League, adding on Murdertron 2, the Suji Machine, Omega Otaku, the Suji Cosplayer, and Captain Crunch, the Captain Cruncher, because you can't improve on perfection, let's be honest. And with those last additions, I started the final 5 battles standing between me and victory. The first trainer had an all-fire type team, so Captain Crunch pulled most of the weight here. Suji Machine and Suji Rider weren't too hard to manage, but to no one's surprise, Kiwami Red was another thing entirely. He killed Omega Otaku and Captain Crunch, but I had done enough damage to him by that point so that Kiwami Gold could finish the job. First fight, done! Next was an all-water type team, which Depression absolutely tore through. Only Dragon Ball died, but he kept Depression alive long enough to end the second fight strong. The grass type team wasn't nearly as forgiving though. The other 2 saved their legendaries for last, but this guy sent out Kiwami Green instantly. Thankfully, Murdertron scared it away before it could do anything too crazy. Honestly, Suji Bear ended up doing more than Kiwami Green in this fight. I had no idea this guy hit as hard as he does. No joke, he killed absolutely everyone on my team until I was just left with Captain Crunch, which should have been the end for me since they were faster than me and had the type advantage. But for some cosmic reason that I'll never understand, this guy moved Suji Bear one space to the left, and since it wasn't a direct hit, I lived with just enough health to kill Suji Bear and keep moving on to the rematch with King. King's new team is really odd. His opening team was fast, but he didn't really have any power behind him outside of Captain Cruncher. I assume he was going for some kind of long game strategy since he did have 2 healers, but I killed both of them before they had a chance to do anything. And weirdest of all, he got rid of Suji Machine for some reason and replaced it with a normal-ass Extermination Coon, and I don't really get why. He ended up killing Depression, but everyone else was pretty okay. King really didn't end up being that interesting in this run. But with him out of the way, all that was left was the final battle against Professor Morikasa. So, it's around this time in a Pokemon Nuzlocke video where the Nuzlocker talks about the journey and how far they've come, and I'm gonna be honest, I always found those a bit cringe and unneeded, but I think I finally get why some of them do it. This run, for all of its problems, was an incredibly fun experience, and it made me fall in love even more with Sujimon as a whole. By the time I got to Morikasa's Japanese Sujimon exclusive team, every one of my Sujimon had already been killed in the previous battles at least once. I had flashbacks to the hours upon painful hours of grinding I had to do after losing to Joker, dreading the idea of having to do all of that again, but I steadied my nerves, looked Morikasa dead in the eye, and I played my ass off during this fight. And as I slowly worked away at his team, Morikasa finally sent out his last Sujimon, and of fucking course it was Sadachi. The first death of the run, arguably the most avoidable death of the run. I don't think I could come up with a better way to end off this Nuzlocke. And just like that, I successfully beat and created the first ever Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth Sujimon Nuzlocke. As far as I'm aware anyway. And what an experience it was. This run was fucking terrible. There were so many issues with this entire Nuzlocke, and the further I got, the more prevalent they became. This is probably a contender for the most illegitimate Nuzlocke ever done. Hell, I didn't even mention the fact that I actually lost the Divine League at the first trainer because I brought Gengar instead of Captain Crunch, but I just restarted it anyway. I lied to all of you. This title is clickbait. I'm really not proud of how this Nuzlocke went, but ultimately, this run was irrelevant. Once again, I didn't really care all that much about this first run. I was just using it to find out what worked and what didn't when it came to my rules, and if you watched this far, Nothing really worked. But now that I have done this run, and have actually done some other runs in my own time, I think I finally figured out a rule set that's actually really good, at least to me. So sit down and take notes, because these are the official Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth Sujimon League Nuzlocke rules by Bread J. Mannington. Version 2.4 and a half. Asterisk. The biggest changes that I'm making to the rules revolve around catching. Since I now know that the keepers of the city can be caught, I'm going back to the one catch per area of the map idea, no infinite catches like I was doing. Doesn't matter how you catch it, whether it be a keeper, raid spot, or some random guy on the street. If the game gives you the chance to catch something, that is what you have to catch and nothing else, not even other raid spots in that area. And because of this, I'm also adding the rule that you can't run away from a fight just to avoid the potential of catching something you don't want. If you do accidentally run into some random guys you don't want, you just have to hope they either aren't catchable or you get lucky and avoid the catch chance. Now this does bring up my original problem where there are only like 15 different parts of the map, and that is nowhere near enough Sujimon to carry you to the end, but that's actually where the gacha machines come in. Rather than limiting you to only one tier that you get to use as much as you want, I've instead gone for a system where after each gym, you get to do 20 pulls on either of the common gachas and 1 pull from the Japanese Master Gacha. I like this system far more, since it not only puts an actual limit on the thing, which I didn't have before, but it also makes it much easier to awaken and evolve your Sujimon since you'll have so many expendable guys. But my favorite part about these new gacha rules is that every single Sujimon is obtainable from the gacha machines, so it gives the run a bit of a randomizer feel, which I really enjoy. These new catching rules have resulted in much more varied teams for me across the runs I've done with it, and I've even gotten to use some Sujimon that I never paid any mind to. But since you will be getting so many Sujimon all at once, I'm just gonna say you only have to name the ones that you put on your team. I'm also adding team wiping, resulting in an instant loss, as well as moving the end of the Nuzlocke back to the fight with King. It's an historic? Is that a typo? There's a typo in this game? Nuzlocks do usually end at the champion, so I completely get if people just want to stop it there. But for those who want to keep it going to the stadium challenges, you can absolutely do that too. In fact, I'm adding quite a few optional rules for anyone who wants to make their run easier or harder. For example, Sujimancer. Again, I totally get if people don't want to focus on the street fights during the Nuzlocke, and if that's the case, there really is no reason to force you to get Sujimancer. But for those who do want that extra challenge, I think it's a nice rule to still have available. Probably the biggest optional rule that I'm adding is New Game Plus, which was an addition that I was very hesitant about, but the more I've played with it, the more I love it. I've realized that my biggest issues with New Game Plus can either be easily avoided or aren't too big of a problem for me to care enough about. All you need to do is just dump all of your old Sujimon from your last save in the trash and make sure you don't surpass the gym level caps before going there. They're all just increments of 10, so it shouldn't be an issue to keep track of them. Just be careful when using Sujimunch because you can get an extra EXP boost which could accidentally throw you over the level cap. The only major issue with New Game Plus is that the levels of your old Sujimon do carry over, and since you can't throw away Sadachi and his students, if you've leveled them up at all or made Sadachi super, I'm just gonna say you can't use them. There really isn't any way around any of that apart from just redoing the entire game on a fresh save file, which I doubt a lot of people are going to want to do when you can very easily replace them with the new catching rules. In terms of the positives, if you don't want to worry about the street fights and just want to focus on the Sujimon battles, this is for you, and one of my favorite aspects of New Game Plus is that you don't have to beat Joker in order to gain access to Super Sujimon. You can get them at any point during the run, which is so nice to have. However, with New Game Plus being an option, I am going to have to outright ban the Kiwami gacha since you'll be able to get the Kiwamis very easily. There is the whole issue with New Game Plus costing money, which is a long-ass story and everyone agrees it was a terrible decision, but that's another reason as to why it's an optional rule, since not everyone will have access to it. And for the final optional rule, and possibly the most controversial, if you have the Sujimon and Resort Bundle DLC, which comes with the DLC Sujimon I mentioned earlier in the video, they're still banned, and so are the free committee agents you get, but I'll allow you to use the free Sujimunch included in the DLC since, as far as I'm aware, no one has found a way to hack in infinite Sujimunch into the game yet. I know the use of EXP candies is a major topic of debate in the Pokemon Nuzlocking sphere. I'm gonna be honest, dude, I don't really care. If you want to skip the grinding, I completely understand. This first run took me over 30 hours to beat. I have a life to live, man. But yeah, those are the new rules, and I'm very happy with them. Like I said, I've done multiple runs with these new rules in my own time, and maybe I'm biased, but I think they're pretty solid. If you have infinite wealth, I 100% recommend trying this out, especially if you love Sujimon as much as I do. This side mode has reignited my interest in creature collectors, and to be honest, as much as I've voiced my disinterest in Pokemon throughout this video, I'm kinda looking forward to Legend ZA, not gonna lie. Anyway, I need to find something to drown out Sujimon from my thoughts. I did these streams back in September, and I'm only just now finally getting the video done. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and get ready for much shorter stuff in the future, because this took way too fucking long.